Quick disclaimer, what I mean by controversial is very mixed in opinions, not necessarily hated. I already made a most hated Tokusatsu video, so if you haven't already, go check that out. So, upon making my last video of the most hated Tokusatsu shows, I got a lot of comments asking why a specific show wasn't on there. Now, the most common reasoning behind it would be because while there is a lot of hate surrounding it, there's also a lot of love, making it an overall controversial show. So I figured there's probably nothing better to do than follow up that video with the most controversial Toku episode. Now, last video, someone also told me to cite my sources, so in case you're wondering, it's Twitter, YouTube comment sections, r/Super Sentai, r/Tokusatsu, tons of DeviantArt pages, and of course forums. Okay, now that that's done, let's get into the video. Yeah, this was the show I was questioned the most for not putting it on my hated video. Now, no one necessarily loves it, but I'd say a fair share of people like it quite a bit. And then, of course, other people despise it. When it comes to the story of the show, I haven't heard anyone say it's masterful. The people who like this show say that if you don't pay attention to details that aren't supposed to make sense and you take into factor how things contribute to the story, it actually becomes a pretty fun ride. The people who don't like the show are kind of bothered by the story because they feel it's way too messy and also was trying to be something greater but didn't hit that and it makes it fall flat. As for tributes, there are some that are generally liked, such as O's, some that are generally hated, such as Gaim's, and some that are rather mixed and controversial, like Blades. I mean, I've never seen anyone say that these tributes are as good as something like, say, Goseiger's tributes. But for most people, it seems like there's pros and cons to Gio's tributes. For some, the pros outweigh the cons, and vice versa. As for characters, some people seem to enjoy them and some people don't. The biggest example of this I always see is Gates. The people who like him think he's funny because of how he's mad all the time. Meanwhile, the people who don't like him just feel like he's a drier version of other secondary pro tags. And then there's the ending. The people who don't like it feel the physical time resetting process was too similar to build, and the people who enjoy it feel like Gio is just so cool and should be highlighted more. Well, I mean, those are the biggest parts of it that are noted. As for the physical writing of the ending arc, some people like it, some people hate it, you know how that goes. And I should also note that most people like Tsukasa and Waz as a meme. If you're a newcomer, you might be surprised to see this one on here, but yes, it's controversial, and if I have to be honest, the reasoning is very, very simple. MMP are not exactly trying to do much except for entertaining kids with the new monster of the week every week for like a couple of years. Obviously, there were some arcs, and what it built into over the course of the 3 shows that would follow it made it turn into an actual story, but aside from that, it was mostly just something you sit down and watch for fun. By doing that, you would be sitting down to watch pure 90s cheese. Some people like that style, and some people think it's absolute cringe. And it doesn't go very far beyond that. I mean, I guess with the characters, some people enjoy watching them, and some people feel like they don't get brought out until Zio. Ultraman Rube seemed like a very interesting show to do at the time, especially with the concept of 2-in-1 Ultraman. In the long run, though, it became controversial. A pattern I notice with the people who dislike it is that they feel more fond about the first half, especially with the villain Aizen. As for the comedic parts of the show, some people like it, some people don't. The Ultras with Rosso and Blue are also kind of controversial on their own. Some people think it works with Ultraman and others don't. And then the villains that appear later on, the brothers as main characters, and the ending of the show aren't really seen as good by most people. So it seems like there's more of a general agreement on this show, at least for most people, but the thing that makes it controversial is whether the good is good enough or the bad is bad enough. And that's really what makes some enjoy it more than others. Yes, we've gone in a full circle because MMPR's Sentai counterpart is pretty controversial too. On one end, most people seem to love Burai's story. Then there's the more fairy tale-like atmosphere and feel to it, which some people think was done actually pretty good, while others think it was done terribly. As for the characters, most people feel like it's a step down from Jetman and Ranger, but some people do find them pretty fun to watch, while others think that they were just straight up boring. But the biggest and most argued thing are the episodes. The biggest thing I hear from most of the people who consider it to be one of the worst toku shows ever, and yes, there are a lot of people who are like that, is that the episodes are extremely filler and put them to sleep. On the other hand, people who enjoy them seem to have a fun time watching the characters do whatever they're doing every episode, and overall think it's a fun experience. So yeah, overall it's mixed in its reputation, but keep in mind that the common opinion from both sides could be influenced heavily by the fact that it's a Sentai that was the first Power Rangers show, and that it's from the 90s. When it comes to Power Rangers Turbo, there is a few things that people actually do agree on in hating. They are the movie, the first 16 episodes, and Justin. The problem people had with these is that they helped ruin Zeo. Many think these episodes are just cringy, and the characters that we had come to know in the previous season just got ruined by it. But then it all changes when we get to the Rangers that would become the In-Space Rangers in their introduction in the second half of Turbo. Here's where it gets more split, as many people still hate it because Justin and also the Car Ranger feel when they're trying to do something serious doesn't blend together well. And then other people don't feel like those elements are very prevalent. Then there's the new characters we get. People who don't like this show feel like they weren't very good at all until In Space. Meanwhile, others think that they actually were pretty similar and it served as a good introduction. The arguments when it comes to Goseiger tend to kinda be all over the place. There's not really a definedness. Some people think that the characters are unique, some people think that they're extremely boring, some people think that they're just straight up good to watch, some people think that some are good and some are bad, and Goseiger and Nalata seem to be the biggest talking points, both of which are mixed. As for villains, that seems to be mostly a good side, but even there some people have problems with them. As for the story, the people who don't like the show will at least say that there was a lot of ideas in it. Most cases of hatred for it seem to come from the middle arc and in some parts the ending arc. As for the people who like the show, I find that they're not the most fond of the middle arc either, however like what happens in the first arc enough and how it overall gets executed in the final phases to call this story enjoyable. And as for the gimmicks and whatnot in the show, some people hate it and some people love it just because of their taste. As soon as the show finished its run, it grew to immediate controversy. During its run, I remembered hearing a lot of people saying that this would replace Ninja as the most hated modern Super Sentai series. But that didn't happen, as soon after the Ryusoulger lovers came out to shed their support for the series. If you look at any aspect of the series, story, villains, characters, atmosphere, gimmicks, it's all controversial. Ko and Melto are probably the most controversial characters. Some just really didn't like their style, and some really enjoyed to see their development. It also seems to be general consensus that the series is an upward spiral, but the people who hate it say it went from bad to less bad, and the people who like it say it went from fine to great. Or at least most people. I'm sure that there are some people out there that think maybe it got worse, but I don't know. Okay, in by far the most controversial Kamen Rider show, we have Faiz. No matter where I go, I always see back and forth about Faiz. It's almost contagious. A lot of it really seems to come down to characters. People who dislike the show often say that the inability for characters to communicate with each other is horrible and the main thing that brings it down. Another thing that I frequently hear from them is that whenever the show tries to go dark, which is a lot by the way, the writing gets bad and the events that end up happening are borderline stupid. And the way the show ends is not very popular among the people who dislike the show. As for the people who like the show, I hear the most love going towards the characters, saying mostly things like they're presented well for the show it's trying to be, and watching their lives cripple is very intriguing. The darker tone and world building also seems to be a very highlighting feature that makes it feel special for these people. people's strong connections or strong hatred towards Faiz makes it a very fiery subject to talk about. For me personally, I deem this as the single most controversial show in all of Tokusatsu. I've heard plenty of people say that it's one of the best Sentai that's ever graced the scene, and one guy I know actually says it's his favorite Tokusatsu. And there are people who think it's one of the worst, if not the worst Sentai ever. People who don't like the show seem to be really bothered by the plot progression. On top of that, they are really bothered by the Patrangers, feel that the gimmicks are kinda boring, and the emotional moments try too hard. As for the people who like it though, I hear them commonly say that the Lupinranger's moments that are had throughout the entire season are absolutely beautiful. On top of that, I hear them say that the gimmicks are very good and unique, the fight choreography is some of the best in Sentai, and the ending arc is one of the most climactic that brings together so many characters throughout the show. So to sum it up, much of the people who hate it feel like they spent too much time trying to focus on one area and the entire show ended up falling flat. Meanwhile, the people who love it feel that it was written in a beautiful and unique way that was great for Sentai. And you can obviously see how that love-hate thing would sort of create very big arguments. And that just about does it, guys. I kind of wanted to put this video out for you guys early because we hit 600 subs. Let's go. Upon starting this channel, I really thought I was only going to be making it for my Discord friends and that was just about it. But it looks like you guys have really liked my video, so I appreciate it a lot. Or I don't know how you guys will like this video. I mean, I hope you liked it after having watched it, but I don't know if I left out something that you guys hear a lot from lovers or haters of any of these shows. So if you do, just basically feel free to comment it in the comment section below. So yeah, much love to all 600 of you. Bye!